join us anytime. But we have Zaber, who's here, bringing his laptop. So we are in a big room, but it's going to be quite a cozy workshop. We have about 5 people online who will be sharing their thoughts as well. But before we begin, I'll just introduce myself quickly. I'm Prateek Sibal. I am a program specialist at UNESCO's Communication and Information sector within the section that works on digital innovation and transformation. And as part of this work, may I request if you are joining the workshop to come in front? Okay. So what we work a lot on policy advice and capacity building, and which is the topic of today's discussion, capacity building on AI and digital transformation for civil servants. We've been working with judiciary for about 10 years, first on freedom of expression, access to information, and safety of journalists. And around 2018, we did a survey where we asked 32 governments in Africa about their policy priorities and capacity building needs with respect to artificial intelligence. And we found out that capacity building is a key issue. And based on this understanding, we've developed a program which targets civil servants, judiciary, and parliamentarians. Each of these programs are in different stages. Hello, Gianluca. Please join in. Okay, yeah. Each of these programs are in different stages of maturity. Today, we'll be talking about civil servants. We've launched a competency framework on artificial intelligence and digital transformation earlier this year in September, which was developed as part of the UN Broadband Commission's working group on AI capacity building. It's a multi-stakeholder endeavor with civil society, academia, with private sector. Actually, UNESCO and Nokia were co-chairs. And based on this work, we'll be developing a UN-wide, and also with GIZ, capacity building facility. And we'll hear from colleagues from UNDP and ITU later today. Just in terms of the objectives of this workshop, we've really gathered here first to share what this framework is about, very briefly, and then move into a conversation. So I'd really invite all of you who are in the audience as well to share your thoughts, interject. I mean, it's really a workshop. It's not like a one-way street. So feel free to, it's a safe space. We are here to learn and discuss. It's an iterative approach, if I may say. So yes. Yes. So I'll introduce this in a little bit more detail shortly. Yeah, I'll talk about this. But just, so the first part, we'll exchange different ideas on what kind of capacity building initiatives are ongoing in different parts of the world. We learn from their experiences, and then we'll move to a little bit more of a user testing. So we have this framework, and we will have a digital capacity building navigator, which we'll share with you. So if you have internet on your phones, you can go through it, and there's a short survey questionnaire in the spirit of getting new ideas on how we can do it better, and what better place to do this than ICEGOV with all of you. So without further delay, as Gianluca is sharing his presentation, no worries, take your time. I will start introducing the framework. We will need the, okay, yeah. So if I may request colleagues in the technical room to project the, okay, it's already there. Okay, so just when we started looking at it based on the needs assessment survey that we had done, we recognized that capacity building for civil servants is a big need across the world. We did this survey in Africa, but we also talked to colleagues, partners from different organizations. And the question was, what kind of competencies do public sector officials need to enhance national digital transformations? And I'll walk through key challenges that we identified in this work, the competency domains, and the recommendations that come out of it, and then we'll move into the discussion. So I think this is the 4th day of the session, and I have attended many, many sessions, and we did, I felt validated when when I was listening to different sessions, that actually the kind of challenges that the researchers working on this framework identified were very similar to what others were talking about. So we have cultural and organizational barriers, aversion to experimentation and innovation. The colleague from Digit yesterday was really talking about how it's hard to work in the public sector when people are risk averse and there are challenges related to, well, we don't want to really take any risks and there's no flexibility, just go by the book. So this is, of course, a challenge to innovation and how we want to move things forward when we're talking about iteration or people centricity and so on. There is low level of leadership support in a lot of places for digital transformation initiatives. Then there are data and infrastructure related barriers. So there is lack of IT infrastructure investment. We were hearing about interoperability. That is a big challenge. I know colleagues from ICEGOV Foundation in India were also talking about how municipalities are basically using different kinds of softwares. There's not enough digital infrastructure and so on. The DPIs that we were talking about a few days ago. With respect to data itself, there are huge challenges, whether it's about open data, the knowledge about how to do it and how to do it effectively around data management and governance practices. And more we are seeing it's more complicated with the use of AI, whether the traditional data protection laws are enough or sufficient, provide sufficient safeguards or not. Then, of course, there are human resource capacity issues, low investment in skills, in data analysis, and emerging technologies. And there is lack of adaptation to procurement processes when we are talking about digital transformation. There is a big issue of vendor lock-ins a lot of times. So these were some of the challenges that broadly came across in the study. And based on some of the literature review, interviews, and this was developed as part of a working group where, as I mentioned, there was different organizations from around the world. There were 3 competency domains which are identified. So we have digital planning and design, which covers systems thinking. It's more focused on the planning and design of digital transformation initiatives, but also enabling environment for digital governance, about strategic foresight. So we're not always in a react mode and just cobbling things together, but have some element of forward-looking thinking within government digital units or specific ministries, about agile strategy. All these are quite hard from whatever we learned to implement actually, and this is why we want to have this conversation with all of you. Then we move to data use and governance, where we're talking about competencies related to basic digital literacy, how to take decisions based on data and evidence, then about open data and open government. We're talking about privacy, security, legal and ethical considerations. And this is particularly important since we have so many technologies. You look really like your profile picture now with this kind of mic. So we have so many challenges with respect to emerging technologies and the need for either updating existing legal frameworks or creating new ones. And there's big debate around horizontal legislative or regulatory frameworks versus sector-specific ones. And this is a discussion which civil servants in governments across the world are having at the moment. Then we move to digital management and execution, where we are talking about competencies related to people centricity. We're talking about iteration, execution in an agile manner, and of course, digital leadership, which we identified as one of the challenges. The next slide is a bit unreadable, but I will nonetheless project it. This is how the framework looks like. It's available online. I will show the link at some point. And it is divided into basic, intermediate, and advanced proficiency levels, with a 4th one, which is on AI-specific competencies. One of the issues that we identified was we work as UNESCO with governments around the world, and in a lot of countries, AI is not as salient. And when we talk to our colleagues in the country offices, they're like, well, yes, it's interesting, but there are bigger developmental challenges, and perhaps first talking about digitalization and so on is important, and then we move to, of course, we are talking about digital transformation here. So that's why we have the framework a bit separated. And for those who want to go a bit more on the AI aspects, they still have content here to work with. So there were 9 recommendations that came out of the working group. These includes first raising awareness about these competencies, and I think ICEGOV has been a great conversation starter with a lot of colleagues from different governments, but also I understood talking to colleagues from the European Commission, there are several similar initiatives to build bridges. And this is something that we've already endeavored with UNDP, ITU, and of course also perhaps with UNDESA colleagues who are here. So this is really an opportunity to build bridges and go work on it together. The challenge is also to help contextualize the framework for needs of different governments. So we've been having conversations on how to do it, make learning resources accessible. Of course, at UNESCO, we support open educational resources. Then one big challenge is how to measure, how to monitor capacity building. It should not be limited to just organizing one training or a series of trainings, but to also define how can we measure impact and then how can we improve such processes. So these are some of the recommendations focused on different sectors. And I think I would stop here. We would move on now to the next segment. Unless there are any questions or thoughts at this point, feel free to raise your hand at any point or just interrupt. We are a really kind of a small group, so we can freely interact. We'll move on to the next segment where we talk about capacity building initiatives and learning basically from what is going on in different parts of the world. And the first kind of presentation that we have is from Dr. Eric Shepherd, who is an expert on competencies itself. And we thought that it may be interesting to hear about his ideas on how he's working with the IEEE's working group on competency definitions, on how competencies can also be made interoperable. So I'd invite our technical colleagues to perhaps play the video. He's in Guatemala at this moment and he could not join, but he was very keen to join, and there's also, he invites us to engage with the community that they've built up. So if we can start with the video, please.
Hello, my name is Eric Shepherd, and I would like to thank you for inviting me to present to you. I'm very sorry I can't be there in person. It sounds like you have a fascinating conference, and it would have been just wonderful to attend. Unfortunately, I have prior commitments, and so I will be in Guatemala for a few days, and so I can't be with you there in Portugal. But that said, I wanted to prepare a few slides to explain the work that's going on with standards bodies and contexts and practices around the development and use of competency definitions and frameworks. So just to, if you would like to learn more about me individually, then you're welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. Always happy to connect with people in our working in this area. I have been working on industry standards since about 1996. I've been around doing this for a while. And for 25 years, I led international organizations focused on talent assessments, competency development. I stepped down from that role about 3 years ago and wrote a book called Talent Transformation, which kind of brings together the fourth industrial revolution and what that means for talent and competencies. And what I realized during that development of that book and all the research for the book, where I was talking to schools, colleges, universities, and employers and policymakers, what I realized was that open competency definitions and frameworks were really needed. And these could be leveraged for more equality in society and a kind of a more transparent view of career prospects and career growth. So welcome and thank Thank you. So I've kind of broken this down into 4 areas. So if one is the kind of headline here is the open competency definitions and frameworks are going to make a difference. And now that we have more tools and schemas and recommended practices in place, we can actually achieve a new vision for the use of these competency definitions and frameworks. So one we need is data schemas. And these need to be machine readable. We need recommended practices so that we kind of write competency definitions and frameworks in similar ways, and we need to be able to tag them for discovery. We need some kind of licensing to, so there's a common licensing model here. And then where does artificial intelligence play in us helping develop these competency definitions? So let me start off just talking about data schemas. So there's 2 groups that are very active in this area. One is the IEEE, and they are in the final stages of a publication of a schema for open competency data standards. So there's the URL, and then the other is One EdTech. They focus more on the academic community. Theirs is actually published and in use for competencies and academic standards exchange, or CASE for short. So these are the 2 groups doing the schemas. And the advantage of having machine readable competencies is that they can be transformable. You can take it from the IEEE format, you can convert it to a proprietary software systems format, or convert it to another standard. So having it in a schema is a good thing. They're also more tradable because now that we can transform them to one, we can kind of trade them and import them into our system. So that's another advantage of machine readable. And they can also be transparent. It's very much easier to look in at the data level and find what they're about. And these can also be transposed not only to a different data format, but to a human readable. So we can take a schema and convert it to something that's a human readable. Okay, so that's kind of the overview of data schemas and how important machine readable competency definitions and frameworks are. The next is recommended practices. So the competency definitions and frameworks have been written in different ways for different groups. So schools, colleges, universities, employers, and policymakers have kind of written these in different ways. We needed to bring those together. So we formed a group under the IEEE, and the goal is to move this to become an ISO standard. We're in the final stages of publication. And we brought together on a call for 2.5 years, about 40 or 50 people per week to discuss this. So we were bringing in experts from schools, colleges, universities, policymakers, competency standards definers, and authors and distributors. And so through that, we worked through the right stuff to have in recommended practices. So we kind of aligned around vocabularies and terms and what's the best way to think about defining this. So this is a diagram, kind of brings the data schema together and the practices together. So we'd need, in the green box there, we need a unique ID, we need a name, we need a statement. In the orange box there, we can see the more optional things. So we have a description, define the levels of proficiency, so expert through novice, or novice through expert. Metadata, so we can find this stuff if it's on a search engine. And then what does this competency definition relate to? So which frameworks does it relate to, which standards, which policies and regulations, assessments, credentials, learning resources. So I only have a few minutes for this, so I cannot drill down all of this, but the standard will be published soon, and you can certainly read that. We can illustrate this, the differences between definitions and frameworks. Here with each one of these green boxes is a definition. So it might be the definition of a verbal communication skill, a presentation skill, or a task, an activity to present on a video, present on a video platform. So that each one of those boxes represents a definition. And then we can link to those for various job roles. So we might have a policymaker as a job role. What do they need to know? Well, they might need to have good written communication skills. They need to do resource allocation, so they need to understand that. We might have administrators. What are the competencies required for an administrator in any kind of industry, in any kind of business, government, or whatever, but which are the ones? Now, there'll be some crossovers. So some of the things that policy makers need to be competent in, so does administrators. And then practitioners, people are actually on the ground doing stuff. What do they need to be aware of? So this is the concept of kind of open link data, having competency definitions linking to the frameworks. So also mentioned in that the idea of discoverability. So discoverability is where we add meta tags to a competency definition so that they can be discovered. So when they can be discovered, they can be more easily used. Okay, so that's kind of a run through of data schemas, recommended practices. Let's just quickly think about licensing. So if we're going to encourage open competency definitions, it will enable trade, whether it's trade for free of charge or for a fee, but an understandable licensing model does enable this trade. Creative Commons is a useful way to think about this. So sometimes the copyright owner retains copyright, but they want attribution, they want to be recognized. They will allow you to adapt it, but you need to share it. They will allow you to use it, but not for commercial purposes. They will allow you to produce derivatives, and there's one public domain, just copyright has been relinquished. So these are kind of licensing models that could be used for these kind of competency definitions and frameworks. And then lastly, how does artificial intelligence play in this? I know the conference is about how people will be partnering with artificial intelligence, but what I've focused on here is how artificial intelligence can actually help us in refining our competency models. So first of all, we might need AI to bring in competency models from things like PDF files or spreadsheets or documents into that machine readable. We established how important machine readable formats are, so this allows us to use AI to bring that in. Not an easy task, but there's a lot of work going on in this area. Another, we need to tag competencies so that they are discoverable. We can search for them, we can find them. It's silly just to have them tucked away in a filing cabinet somewhere. We've got to make them open in this new world, to assign meta tags so they're searchable, discoverable. And then as we bring competency models in from other places or consolidate within an organization, we're going to need to identify duplicates, identify those that are remarkably similar, which AI can do more easily than humans, and then humans might make the last decision. And then if we have these competency definitions, we want to link them out to open educational resources so that if someone wants to develop a competence, then they can go and look at these open educational resources. So this way that AI can help us with this bigger puzzle. So very broad subject. Hopefully it's given you a little glimpse about the work that's going on and what our future might bring to us. You're welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. We also have a LinkedIn group called Connecting Competence Communities. It's called C3. We have monthly webinars on that. You're very welcome to join the webinars. Reach out to me. There's my email address, my other contact details. Also, I'm the president of the Foundation for Talent Transformation that does the work in this area. We also help individuals understand themselves and others to be prepared for the future of work. And if you'd like to read the book, there's the link to the book. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to share this all with you, and have a great conference.
Thank you for that. So I mean, the idea here was really, we have so many competency frameworks and everyone working in their own silos, to think about how to standardize some of the definitions and how can we start collaborating. And the work that Eric and colleagues have been doing with IEEE is provide significant insights on how we can move in that direction, but also towards the end on how to make make the links with OERs along with competency definitions and so on. I think it could also be interesting for the learning platforms that we were talking about yesterday. But after this, I'd now invite Dr. Gianluca Misuraka to share his presentation, perhaps by way of quick introduction. He's a founder and vice president on technology, diplomacy, and international relations of Inspiring Futures, which is a global advisory consultancy in strategic foresight, social innovation, and digital governance. And he has a long experience working with EU JRC as a senior scientist and is leading a master's program as the executive director on AI for Gov. And we'd love to hear more about this program, some of the key lessons and the key elements of this program, and what kind of competencies from the framework that we have here does it cover. So over to you, Gianluca.
Maybe if you allow me, thanks, Pratik. I will stand. So
and I'll take a seat here.
And also, I don't need to be here. I'll do like Teresa the other day. No? So it's not the same, big room, say full room, but I think we can go much more into details of some of the issues. So thanks for the invitation to you and colleagues, and also I know someone is connected online, so we have an audience also there. And I see also that we can perhaps move from theory to action here. That is the topic of the conference. So, I mean, I tried to put some slide on, so the topic here is not necessarily to partner with AI, as Eric was saying, but actually how to build capacity for policymakers to work with digital technologies for the better of society, for the better of society. So, I mean, you say we could stay 2 hours talking, because I'm getting older, what I've been doing in my career, but I always try to look ahead with a foresight, futurist perspective, and definitely, well, a big part of my career was spent at the IPTS. At the beginning, it was called Institute for Prospective Technological Studies, looking also, for instance, at the very beginning with colleagues, well, mainly colleagues. I was just reviewing the DG Comp was born in Seville, this framework that it took many years to now become a consolidated instrument that has been looked by many countries around the world. But also in the last part of my career at the JRC, I've been focusing mainly on artificial intelligence in government, in public sector, leading the AI Watch that I'll mention a bit later. And now, as you said, I have these several hats, in particular the one on human-centric AI, this international initiative of the European Commission that has also, I would say, an awareness building component, but especially the master on AI for Gov, on which I will focus my presentation. But I was saying this the other day when we celebrated, the anniversary of this conference. 20 years ago, when I was working for UNDESA, I was inspired by Secretary General Kofi Annan that was saying let us resolve to bridge the digital divide and let's act urgently. Now, 20 years after, we have seen at the beginning of this conference that Secretary General Guterres was still emphasizing this, and clearly we have done a lot of advancement, but I think we need to speed up. So I'm very grateful for the colleagues that are setting up this global framework for collaboration. And so also, I mean, discussing with Pratik and say, okay, what I can bring to the table is my experience exactly with the European Commission, with the European Union, that has been struggling, of course, also not only because all member states speak different languages, but also because this is not really a competence of the European institution, it's more member states. But now finally with the von der Leyen Commission, so I was happy to leave the Commission the moment that this is now so high in the agenda, both to the foresight and the digital transformation, because now the Commission is taking the lead to what they say, to lead the digital decade. And these are the three building factors that I see somehow also reflected in the competency framework. Data governance, of course, the human-centric digital transformation, and of course the infrastructures that maybe this is less considered in this framework, but it's something we need to definitely, we cannot forget, and also the foresight perspective, and I'll be back on that. As I say, there is now this Someone could say it's a bit rhetoric, but it's a kind of ambitious plan to lead the digital decade. Of course, we don't know what is the future, but definitely, I think if we don't try to shape it, we won't be able to make the future we want. But definitely, this I won't just, I mean, these are, let's say, images from policy documents of the Commission that's been published basically between last year and this year. So the Digital Compass 2030, I think even the Director General Gaffi yesterday mentioned, but in general, there's a lot of attention to skills and digital skills in particular, with a number of targets. Someone may say these are not so, let's say, well focused, in the sense that maybe other skills are needed, but I won't enter into this debate. There is a kind of roadmap on how we move to this digital decade, but also what I want to put you the attention on is the Digital Europe program, because for the first time the European Commission, mandated by the member states, could launch a full digital program with quite some money on it, especially trying to fill the gaps that in Europe we have in terms of infrastructure, so high-performance computing, cybersecurity, AI, they're all the framework for the European Digital Innovation Apps, but also focusing a lot on reinforcing the skills, advanced digital skills, and some master courses. Of course, also in Brussels, they don't necessarily know what to teach to the professionals of the future, and that's why they launched before the Digital Europe program was even approved as part of the, with some, well, I think it was 9 million euros left out from other projects. They packaged to fund 4 high-level master programs, and there were several applications, I think more than 100, and we were one of the 4 that has been actually funded, the Master on AI for Public Services, and actually the only one that is operational, in the sense that we instead to think about designing the curriculum and then launch it, we launch first the program, and then we are designing the curriculum while piloting with the participants themselves. The other are starting now, hopefully for them, and now the 580 million euros that the Digital Europe program will put on the table to fund the new master program on AI should also learn from our experience. Hopefully we have some good insight for them. I also mentioned before, and I see knowledge in the room, the presence of Luca Taggi, that is one of the colleagues that joined JRC when I left, to also go ahead with the work we started in a pioneer way back in, I would say, 2018 and then 2019, when we launched the AI Watch with a specific, that is a kind of observatory for, to monitor the uptake and the impact of AI in Europe and for Europe, so as also a global perspective. And I had the honor and the challenge to develop the part on AI for the public sector. So you may have seen this report with a review of what's happening in Europe, with all the limitations we were talking the other day here during the plenary session, but also it gave birth to other research and analysis that colleagues are doing, updating this, and also trying to develop a roadmap for the adoption of artificial intelligence in the public sector. So with a number of issues that are outcome of consultation with experts, with member states. And of course, I cannot be blamed for that, but my colleagues were so nice to mention as part of one of the recommendation and actions to follow, to design national and European capacity building programs for public sector innovators that actually should support the development and the adoption of AI in support of the transformation, the digital transformation of public services. And in particular, they mentioned in their report that a possible model is our Master AI for Gov that was launched, as I say, just last year in a pilot edition, and so may serve as one of the input for member states and the Commission to further reflect on what we should do. And so what are we doing, actually? Because this is not just a master that is already quite challenging, but actually this is the first pillar of a strategy that we have in this project to build an ecosystem on AI in public service across the EU, but then even more ambitiously trying to establish a center of excellence on AI that could have a worldwide or a global scope. So this is part of our mandate, and we are working on that. Also, on one side, we have developed a master on which I will focus now, and then, of course, we are engaging with experts and policymakers, mainly in Europe, but also worldwide. We have colleagues from the United Nations, from World Bank, and OECD that are also part of our advisory board. So we are discussing how we can actually leverage on this. There is a lot of interest also outside of Europe. I was recently in South America. We were discussing with our colleagues in different regions, so how we can join forces and not just, of course, we cannot do everything. And there are 4 main institutions here that I will briefly mention. And also what is important that we are not, I mean, we don't want to replace or compete even with other, and I would say even much more sound and advanced program that there are in the academia in Europe and worldwide. But we say, okay, we want to train what we call functional specialists. So these are not data scientists, are not just super expert in public administration, but actually people that work hands-on on procurement, on how to build the systems, and what kind of services we want to do. To do that, we integrate both the technical aspects and the policy aspects of AI in the public sector. So basically, governance and policy aspects of AI, the human-centric principles. So we have a few friends that were also part of the high-level expert group on AI that teach and are part of our scientific committee. We focus on use cases, so it's not just theory, but it's actually practice, so we really put them hands-on, and actually participants that are not, let's say, young students. Actually, the average age is 40-something, so they are actually directors, head of departments, so we put them outside of their comfort zone. So they normally, they know what they're talking about. Some of them, some of our first cohort are a member of the expert committee of the OECD or the Council of Europe, but we put them outside of their comfort zone because they have to use data, for instance, and maybe they're not trained in Python, and so like that. So we also provide technical knowledge on specific techniques, but okay, we don't want them to become data scientists. It's not needed for their function. And also we, of course, are very much leveraging on the networking aspect because these are the leaders. Well, some are already the leaders of today, some are the leaders of tomorrow for sure. So what is the result of the first pilot edition? We were a bit maybe crazy to launch this in August 2021, and we got more than 150 applications in a month and a half, and we selected 40 high-level participants with very diverse background from over 30 different countries or nationalities. We also managed to make sure that we have a 50-50% balance of male-female. We just received the assessment from all of them on different modules. It's very, very satisfactory, but also we have a lot of things that we learned from also the mistakes we've done in the first edition. So they were really working on these, and as I say, that they are from, we have from Azerbaijan to Oman to Argentina, and of course many European member states. So as I say, the main organizations are the Universidad Politécnica de Madrid that is leading this with the Politecnico di Milano that, I mean, surprisingly for many is not the Department of Engineering that is also involved, while the UPM is the AI department, but it's actually the Department of Design. So we have actually putting these two very diverse profile and with a lot of challenging, let's say, discussion, if not fight, and that I had to somehow to balance. And they are actually giving the joint diploma. That is also another challenge, because in Europe, to get a diploma with two universities, sorry. But then we have also Taltech. So in Estonia, everybody is talking about Estonia. So we bring the Estonian CTO or CIO to tell us what didn't work. not what we all know that was fantastic in a small country with 1.3 million citizens. And then we have the FAU, the Frederick Alexander University, that is a center of excellence in AI, mainly for industry, but then now we are trying to convert or to build together an AI center of excellence for public sector. I won't go much in detail. This is what we call the AI for Gov learning journey, as we have a bit revised after the first edition. So classes are mainly online. Last year we were doing Friday afternoon, Saturday morning, very challenging for families especially. But now we have Tuesday and Friday afternoon. So because also we decided to focus mainly on, apart from Europe, Africa and Latin America participants. So we're sorry for Chinese and Asian for the moment. Although we have, for instance, we have the head of the Prime Minister's Office of Bhutan that decided to enroll anyway, although it's very challenging in terms of time because the lectures are not recorded. You have to be there, you have to lively participate, and we count if you are there. And then we have project works, a lot of project-based learning, so they are actually working in team. And then we have 3 in-person events, one in Madrid in a couple of weeks, one in Milan at the end of the program, but also we alternate between Tallinn and Erlangen near Munich. And the curriculum, overview at the high level, we have a focus, an introduction to AI public administration that, of course, for some is maybe more or less already known. Others don't know. They get inspired, especially who has a more technical background. Then we focus on AI, on techniques of AI, and the service design and AI ethics. That is an important element, and this we do exactly with the member. For instance, my colleague agreed that is the one that in the high-level expert group actually proposed the definition everybody is now using about human-centric AI. We also, as I said, specifically focus on hands-on project on procurement of AI and other activities. And then, of course, everybody has to do a master thesis. That is also challenging, but we also do sometimes, we do in a group or individual. Some are publishing them, some are actually working on a specific project. For instance, there was a project of a startup that was being worked by our participants, because we also launched what we call the AI for Gov Startup Contest. This is part of the let's say, the ecosystem development. I won't go into detail, but basically, and there is also, I would say, a surprising success in the sense that we, discussing with professional or venture capitalists, or they will say, but what are you talking about? Nobody is actually doing AI in the public sector. You won't find any. So in 3 weeks, we got more than 40 applications for small money. We're talking about 10, 15,000 euros that we gave as an award with sponsors. And this we are now replicating next year in Germany with hopefully a larger base. Now, maybe I'm going a bit longer, but I will stop soon. I just wanted to reflect on some of the issues that with Pratik and colleague we started discussing yesterday, and why we are here, I guess. So remember, Pratik and colleagues started by looking at the needs of on AI in Africa. From that, there was a huge request for advice and training, and from that we have now this proposal. And I congratulated in private, but also in public, about the effort that the colleagues have been doing in preparing this competency framework on AI and digital transformation. But of course, and I wouldn't be, let's say, useful if we don't get into the critical elements of it. I have a number of open questions. So we started discussing already. So what is the purpose and the objectives of this document? Because as you also say, there are many competence framework, and we've seen the very good presentation of Eric before, but this has more, I would say, pedagogical or analytical approach, very needed. But what is the scope? What is the target audience? Maybe we have to ask these questions before to maybe go to the second phase. Is there a solid conceptual model that is actually underpinning this framework? What is the methodological approach followed both to build the framework, but also that then you want to implement for the training, capacity building activities? Exactly, what is the expected impact and the implementation strategy that we want to, you want to, or you are thinking to operationalize? Now, I did a bit of homework last night and looked at the mandate of the Broadband Commission of UNESCO. I was a bit puzzled because actually they're talking about digital transformation and artificial intelligence, but of course they focus very much on AI and the trustworthy use of AI. That is, the new mantra. Everybody, you cannot go to a conference without talking about trust or trustworthy use of AI. And the foresight, I was very, very pleased to see that the objective is to enhance the foresight, the awareness. So it's not just a training on some technical issues, but really to make someone, civil servants, policymakers, the general public, to think about the future and the opportunities, but also the risks that this technology have. And then, of course, provide a basis for capacity development initiatives. So it's a very, I would say, a very important policy statement there and policy instrument. Now, so just to get to conclusion, clearly, in my opinion, I may be wrong, of course, but there is the need maybe to reframe the framework itself. And when I say reframing, I refer to what we have published on one of the flagship projects of JRC before I left, on exploring the digital transformation of government, and subtitle Understanding Public Sector Innovation in the Digital Age, because sometimes we think we know what we are talking about and we don't necessarily know it. And also because here I was puzzled by the fact that are we talking about digital transformation and AI, so where AI is clearly one element, one technology, a set of technology, though very important because of the cognitive implication it has on society, of the digital transformation. All these rather we focus on AI and assuming the rest is already there. We all have broadband and etc. Just to mention one thing. And then how we actually roadmap and we put this in practice. So we need to, and we were discussing this with the colleagues of CETIC, for instance, how we design and pilot the competence framework through a survey-based approach, but also maybe have some hybrid approach where we also train some real people somewhere in the world, or maybe also using some online tools that you are actually already developing. But as I say, before developing the tools, maybe we should be clear on what is the objective and what we want to do, what you want to do. And so we probably need a more robust theoretical and evidence-informed conceptual model. And I was pleased to see the foresight dimension mentioned, but I don't see it actually, let's say, in the document. So let's introduce a real foresight dimension, the human-centric perspective that at the moment is, the risk is these words are a bit like, put there in the vacuum without really giving a meaning. And then, of course, I'm very pleased to see that many organizations, like I would say, like in the WSIS original meaning of the WSIS in Tunis and Geneva many years ago, when many of you were still at school, maybe. So there was this partnership building approach, how we can learn from previous experiences and actually contribute to really strengthen this UN-wide methodological approach that otherwise, unfortunately, risks to remain once again not useful, not implemented. Everybody knows, and we've been discussing it everywhere. Thomas has been written a lot about it, a very big book. I suggest everybody to read. We have with we colleague Ronnie Medaglia, we have a track at the Digital Government Society conference next year in Tartu on digital government and sustainable development goals. Please send papers. So we need to remind ourselves all the time that ICTs are cross-cutting. It's not just objective 16 or action 16.9. It's really let's say impacting and has implication on all the set of the SDGs or what will come next. Then maybe already the SDGs are maybe should be changed or will be changed before 2030, hopefully, because the only constant in life, as Heraclitus was saying, is change. So let's change and let's get inspired to make something useful for the world, I would say. So I hope that was also useful for the discussion we have today, and happy to contribute now and in the future.
Thank you. Thank you so much for really walking us through the background, but also your critique. And of course, we welcome critique. This is a space for critique and for us to discuss and advance. So thank you so much for that. Are there any questions from the floor also about the master's program that they're running? For us, it's quite interesting to see different models. But before we move to the next speaker, who's going to talk about an online MOOC in Latin America that they ran, if there are any questions about this program that you may have for Gianluca.
All clear.
All clear. Okay, so thank you so much. Well, no. we have, there was a question or no?
No.
Okay, so we have Gabriela Dennis, who's an associate researcher at GovLab in Chile, and they have been working on a MOOC on AI in the public services. So I'll invite Gabriela to share her experience with this MOOC. What are the key elements? What were some of your lessons learned from this program, and what would be your advice based on the links that you saw in the competency framework and the work that you are doing? So over to you, Gabriela.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation and this opportunity for us to share our learning process. Before talking about this MOOC course, I want to give a little bit of background of what we do in the GovLab. So we're a public innovation lab in Universidad Adolfo Ibáñez here in Chile. And since 2018, we have a course. It's a data science design for civil servants. So this course is a 24-hour. They earn a degree. It's not like the master's, but still I think it's pretty innovative in terms of Latin America and in Chile. So we've been doing this course since 2018. It's super practical course. The idea is that civil servants come with a project in mind, and we help them design. Since the public problem that we want to attack, until what kind of analysis we think is more pertinent, ethics and legal framework, etc. So in that scope is that we were asked by ILDA, which is the Latin American Initiative for Open Data, to work alongside them, and AGESIC, which is the Governmental Agency for Electronic Government and Society of Information and Knowledge in Uruguay, to design this open MOOC course. So they're trying to get all this online. If someone doesn't know, MOOC is it's a massive online open course. So they've been working on a lot of this and trying and doing these capacitations for civil servants. But they felt that there was a course that was needed, focused on general public, with a little bit of focus on civil servants, but the idea is to do a course that is going to be available for everyone. So we started working for this 2020, 2020, I want to say, you know, pandemic and the times, it's all mixed up. So one of the biggest lessons that we learned in this process was the importance of going to the roots. We work with an instructional designer. So the first meetings was just like, where is people now? Where do we want to move it with this course? We use a taxonomy of learning, and we got to the consensus that the idea, or main idea, was to move people from a feeling more of like fear from AI and data science to an acceptance one. So this this MOOC course, we are trying to focus on like a lot of concepts that need to be understood, you know, like algorithm. A lot of people don't know what is an algorithm. So that was like, and some people get scared, you know, it's like, oh, the algorithm says that this and that. So it's a little bit hard. And so this MOOC course goes in that direction, you know, and there's a lot of your framework that applies to what we try to do in this MOOC course, especially with the attitudes that you have on the framework. I think it's very good. It's very novel. I haven't read it anywhere, so it's very important to know like what are the attitudes that we want in people that are going to work in these data science or AI projects. So the good news is that this MOOC, it's open, it's in Spanish. So if everyone from Latin America or some other Spanish countries, they can take it. It launched on April of this year. And more than 400 people have successfully ended this course, which is very good because it's a MOOC course, but it also has like an important forum part. So there has to be a moderator. So it's not infinite the number of participants that can take this course at the same time. So there's like some editions. I think now it's in the 4th edition. So people from AGESIC and ILDA are very happy. We are also very happy, and I'm very proud to have participated in this experience, which was something very new for us at GovLab. We have some experience like building capacities for civil servants, but before pandemic, it was all like on site, you know, person to person. And then we moved our courses to be online, but synchronic ones. You know, we take a lot of like the practical aspect of it. So a lot of team working and peer reviewing. So we had to be synchronic. And so this was like very good. And as of our course for civil servants, we also here in Chile have had more than 500 people that have taken this course, which is very good. We do a few editions every year. The courses are no more than 20, 30 people because we have to not only do the lectures, but also like help with their work and manage that. You know, we need to keep it something simple. And we in GovLab, like trying to link what we do with your framework, we basically focus on the digital planning and design with a very important focus on the problem identification and solution. When we started, we understood that was like the key point, you know, is like how are we expected to change people's life? And that goes with like this human-centric AI, you know, like we have to do something that matters at some sense. And that was very hard. And that is something that keeps to get like reminded to people all the time. Okay, and for what? What is the point? And do you want to do this? What do you want a neural network, for example? And it's like, oh, maybe you don't need that. You need something simpler. And also in the last few years, we have taken like an important approach that is also in the framework, that is a data use and governance. You know, the importance of ethics and privacies, and how do we deal with sensible information. So we also have a course that is focused in that specifically. So just to not make it too long, I think that this framework, it's very interesting how you put levels on the competencies, like basic, intermediate. And I think that will help us a lot on working with our courses, like where we want to go, what is the level of this competency that we want our students to have at the end of the course. So I think that this framework, it's going to help us design in a good manner all of our curriculums in Chile, and I think that other people will say the same. There's not a lot of information about this, and it's very good that the world, it's creating knowledge about this teaching process. So yeah, that's a little bit of our story, our MOOC courses and other courses that we have here in Chile. And thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you, Gabriela, for sharing your experience. And I think it's part of what we are trying to do is also to have this global dialogue and facilitate what already exists, so we are not duplicating and can learn from each other's experiences. For instance, you mentioned that your course is talking about data use and governance, and also is focusing more on the design and the planning phase. And it's interesting to perhaps at a later point link up with this free MOOC on the platform that we will be building together with the partners, so it's even accessible widely. Thank you for your thoughts. The next, I don't know if there are any questions or comments at this point for Gabriela, also from stage. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I just was a bit confused, but because she said that their training, the groups are 20 people, but so they is a MOOC or is an online course? And what is the duration of the course? Because I saw online that it's very basic. So,
Gabriela, would you like to? Yeah.
Yes. No, I was talking about two different courses.
Okay.
One is the MOOC, which I think can hold up to 50 or 70 people. I will have to check because of the forum part. It's very important. And the other thing is that where our knowledge comes, like when we were asked to help design this MOOC, it was before we had this prior experience of teaching this other course here in Chile, which is 24-hour long, and it's online synchronic, and it's 20 or 30 people. So that's where our knowledge comes, and how we try to put that knowledge into this MOOC course for Uruguay.
I think one question was, is it with 50 or 70 people, is there a limit that you impose, because MOOCs would generally reach a much wider number of people, or it's because you are facilitating, so it's a different kind of format?
Yeah, so there is facilitation, so that kinds of like restrict a little bit the amount of people that can enroll at the same time. So that's why in Uruguay, we don't run like the daily basis of this MOOC course. It's done in the ICEGOV. So they impose like this restriction, but they open a lot of editions. And And the course, this MOOC course, I think that the duration was like 24 hours lective. So it depends on you, it's self-paced. So that's why I think it's very good that 400 people already finish it. Because the thing with MOOC courses is that a lot of people enroll, but not a lot of them finish. So yeah, you can do it like at your own pace and just go do the exercises and the evaluations, because we have an evaluation after each model. But there's also like this forum part which we thought was very important to keep, especially to like share experiences, you know, and share ideas. And people really like that part of the forum, but as all forums, they have it has to be moderated, you know. Yeah. You don't know who can enroll and maybe what can write in this forum. So that's a restriction, yes.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts, Gabriela. I think now we move on to the next speaker, who's from GIZ, and Kim Schultz, who's the head of AI Hub in Rwanda for GIZ. And they had, it's coffee break or something. Okay, so we do that before or we do it? Okay, yeah, I think people definitely need coffee in the first row. So perhaps we go to Kim and then we come back to coffee, which I think all of us need. So Kim has been working with GIZ, and they did an innovative project, and I personally really like the AI capacity building handbook that they produced. So Kim, it would be great to learn more about your experience of actual working with policymakers, and you had a cohort of Asian and African policymakers, but I will let, the floor is yours, Kim.
Thank you so much, Pratik. Thank you also for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here, and I'll try to make it short, not to stand in between you and your coffee. I hope I can achieve that goal. So maybe first of all, a bit of background on the Fair Forward initiative, of which I'm part. So the Fair Forward Artificial Intelligence for All initiative is part of German Development Corporation, and our goal is basically to democratize AI across developing countries. We are currently piloting this initiative in 7 countries, 5 of them in Africa and 2 in Asia. And we're working in 3 main fields. So the first deals a lot with access to open data and AI technology. The second deals with capacity building. So we're not only building the capacities of civil servants, but we're also building the capacities of local innovators and developers in our partner countries. And the third area is AI policy, where we've supported some countries like Rwanda and Ghana in developing their national AI strategies. So that's a bit of background on the initiative, but coming to the capacity building program that we implemented. So we did this together with the Human Sciences Research Council in South Africa, that were a really good partner for us on this. And the goal was really to make government officials from these 7 partner countries that we have in Africa and Asia ready to influence policy in the area of AI in their respective countries, because we felt, especially while developing AI strategies in these countries, it was really hard for the policymakers to actually take decisions because they didn't have the knowledge and skills in the area of AI and not the understanding that they would need to take informed decisions. So what we did in the end was that we had a group of 25 mid-tier policymakers, so government officials from ICT ministries, regulatory authorities, and data protection authorities. And we took them through a 4-month capacity building program from September to December last year. And it was a virtual experience. I think we had bi-weekly sessions, and there were also some asynchronous tasks like like homework and peer exchanges in between. And we really focused on, I think, most of the competencies that you've also laid down in the competency framework as the so-called AI specific competencies. So that's really what we were focusing on. So we talked generally about what is AI. We also talked a lot about data governance frameworks and data sharing policies. We talked about institutional readiness for AI, use cases to achieve the SDGs, but also social impact assessments. So it was really a broad range of topics that we covered during these 4 months. And I think one of the key aspects of our approach was really peer learning and exchange, because we really think that you can't do AI policy by yourself, basically, and it also can't really be implemented at the national level. We think that a cross-country exchange, especially in Africa and Asia, is really relevant in this area. So we really focused in the methodology also on enabling this peer exchange and making enforcing dialogue between the participants of the course. We also afterwards broke the course down, and we conducted 2 crash courses, so to say, in Rwanda and in India, where we basically had a 1-week on-site course, and we really condensed the materials into this 1-week course and reached a much larger number of people in these 2 countries. So that's briefly on the course itself. Let me focus maybe on some lessons learned that we can take from this. So I think the first one is government officials are busy. I think we all know this, so it's really hard to get them into such courses and to really make them commit to it. So our strategy here was really to have them appointed by senior government officials to take the course, and then also to work with official certification to create some sort of accountability and make sure that they were also investing the time to participate, and that actually worked quite well. Also, another lesson learned was making sure from the beginning that we get the right people into the room, because they're actually, from what our experience was in our partner countries, there are very few people in government so far who really focus on a daily basis on digital policy and AI policy, especially in developing countries. So it's important not to get anyone in the room who will never apply the knowledge in their daily life, but really to focus on the ones who are in charge of these topics. We also learned that it really adds value to add in-person events in the schedule. So virtual learning is nice, and I think we've all kind of gotten to terms with it during COVID, but we also realized that when we brought everyone together at the end of the course in an in-person event, it facilitated the exchange and was really valuable for everyone. And then lastly, I would say, really invest in constant communication with the course participants, and don't assume that they will, you know, just be there because they have it in their calendars, but really make sure you constantly follow up with them, you engage, you ask them how they're feeling about the course, and you also evaluate very regularly what they've learned and how they feel about the learnings. It wasn't only a one-off course, that's also important to mention. So Pratik already mentioned that we've published a handbook, and this handbook is basically a resource for any institution who wants to replicate the course. So it could be development partners, it could be governments, it could be researchers or universities. So it basically provides the methodology that we use, but also all the course materials and recordings from the sessions, so that basically anyone can easily replicate the course and adopt it to their individual needs. And secondly, we also, together with the Smart Africa Digital Academy, published the course as a MOOC, as an e-learning course, so that anyone can also take this as a self-paced course, which is obviously missing a bit the element of the peer learning, but it's also for those who don't want to invest as much time. So that maybe briefly on the lessons learned. I think going back to the competency framework, I think some of the recommendations have been quite relevant for us, especially to make courses open and to create open platforms for courses, because I feel like if we only had done this once, the impact would be much smaller. So for us, it's really important to make it all open. And I also really like this point about raising awareness around the need for competencies for policymakers, because I think it's often something we overlook, and we rather look at competencies for developers or academics, but something that we often overlook is to actually focus on competencies of government officials. So we also found that quite important. I think I'll leave it here and happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Kim. I would also invite you to look at the handbook, which is available online. And the good part is that they've also shared a lot of the presentations that they use, so the links are there. It's really meant to be scaled up. So I wanted to, though, come back to the question that you mentioned about screening, and also pose that same question to Gianluca, because you mentioned as well what Kim was saying, that they really targeted specific people in government who potentially had high ownership. And so perhaps before coming back to you, Kim, on what was your process and how did you handhold and identify the people who you thought could be more motivated. I come first to Gianluca. You also screened people for your master's program. How do you also, it's a longer duration program as well. How did you keep up the motivation, and what were some of those ways?
Yes, well, thanks. I mean, yeah, I think we are talking about different things. So in our program, this is a 60 European credits according to European transfer system. So it is still a master of first level, in the sense it's a professional master, but also with the opportunity to then have a second year for having a second degree level master according to the Bologna process. So something that is also possible, useful for then getting, let's say, promotion in the public sector. So that is very important as it's not just for your own, let's say, knowledge, but you can then also use it, spend in the job market. It starts in September and finish in July with 2 days from, 6 hours, 7 hours per week. So it's quite intense, and then we have these 3 events. Yes, we screen at the beginning, and the selection is done in a 2-tier approach. So first they express interest. We have a lot of people, a long waiting list of people that express interest, and then we select what we think are not necessarily the best in absolute terms, but the best to fill the room, because we want to match people with technical experience with people that are policymakers roles. And we have actually not only from the government, we have public sector, private sector, a lot of people from the insurance companies, banking system. So they are not necessarily there for just to skip working hours, because it is after working hours. And also we have people from civil society, international organization. We had also application from GIZ, and then they dropped because they couldn't manage with but we have people from the Commission, colleagues from the Commission, international organization, development banks. They pay. At the moment we have a subsidy because of the funding from the Commission. So last year we had many scholarships, and now we are increasing steadily. So this year they pay 5,400 euros for the program, plus the 3 travels to the events. They pay by themselves. We offer, of course, something, but in general they have to pay. And this is, we were surprised to see out of 40 people last year, we actually got every week 41 or 42, in the sense that someone has also children to join the program with them. Someone was born during the program. But apart the jokes, they were really active. So, of course, we hope this will continue. Now with the new cohort we just started, this is also the same. We have a lot of networking, and they have also their own channels. They developed also to, we have a Moodle, we have Slack, we have WhatsApp, but also now we have, and we will be piloted soon, the European Union has developed a digital skills and jobs platform. So it's a huge platform where we have our own community. At the moment it's restricted, but that can be even opened up to others. So, I mean, it's a different concept in the sense that this is an educational project. It's not a development capacity building product.
And for Kim, at your end, what has been the feedback? Precisely this difference when we have a significant investment of time from civil servants to keep the motivation high, and also what do they get out of it beyond the good to have knowledge? Did you have any feedback in that sense as well?
Yes, so I think it was most useful for people who could actually directly apply the knowledge in their jobs, and I think that's often the case, and I think that's also the problem that many of these programs have, because as civil servants, how often would they actually apply AI knowledge in their jobs if they don't really focus on this topic in their daily routine? So I think for us, the people who were most engaged were the ones that had very AI-specific jobs at a technical level, so who are really focusing on that topic. And we were also choosing them based on this. So we basically worked with our focal points in the countries, and they knew these people before that. So there was also a personal relationship that we had with these people. And I think in terms of usefulness, afterwards, I mean, obviously it's not an official master's program, but also for these government officials, I mean, they could never afford, or their institutions couldn't afford to participate in a $5,000 program, right? So I think it's an opportunity for them to still get knowledge. And at least in our case, we had 2 people who also got promoted to higher positions in the area of AI in their respective institutions based on the program they undertook. And I think the main learning that we also had was that this peer exchange was very valuable for them, because that's something that they wouldn't get otherwise if they would just work in their institutions on a daily basis.
Thank you for those insights. And we are of course documenting all the lessons that from different kinds of programs, and we'll produce a summary outcomes document after the session, and of course share with you. So as I had promised for the coffee, but I realized that it's actually at 4. So if it's not, if it's okay, we actually have the next speaker who is a civil servant to hear from Makaziwe, who's joining us from South Africa. I don't know if she's online. She had a power cut at some point, she said, but if we could project and okay, colleagues, can we have Makaziwe on Zoom if she's online? Okay, perhaps if she is not there online at the moment, we go to Zaber, who has the final presentation in this group, and then we take the coffee break, and then we come back on the more testing of the navigator tool. She'd mentioned there was some load shedding which was going on. So over to you, Zaber. Would like to come here?
Yeah, I'll just go ahead. All right. Hi, my name is Moinul Zaber. I work at UNU-EGOV. I'm a computer scientist by training, and technology policy specialist by training as well. So basically, whatever I do, it actually goes into this 2 domain and try to actually, cope up with the changes that happens in both the domains. Now, I'm really glad that I've been invited to talk here, and being with all, Jean-Luc here, it's a pleasure for sure. I mean, whoever knows him, what he works and everything, and been following him for a long time, and so this is something that is a pleasure. And also, it's a pleasure to be here to contribute to the really a great project that UNESCO actually have taken. And I think that if it is successful, then it will actually make a lot of, changes to the world for sure. But it has to be successful. If it doesn't, then it will be a disaster. I mean, that's the problem. So because it's kind of like a thing that where we are actually talking about. How we build the capacity of the people who will be embracing AI in their public sector, and in their bureaucratic environment. Now, so I actually had this presentation just to remind us about things that we need to actually think about before we even think about how we would go about this with this. Now, am I doing the right thing? Yeah. So this is something that everybody talks about, right? And that's why it is a buzzword. I'm using this this phrase, responsible use of AI, which is not really quite used much. But of course, AI equals growth is something that everybody talks about. And we also know about this thing that between now and 2030, McKinsey did some kind of a research where they basically showed that around 13 trillion GDP growth will happen, right? If AI is embraced and everything. So not responsible AI, but embracing AI as a whole. But whenever I think about applicability of AI, how we should use and everything, we should always remember this thing that it has to be the use that we should really look at, but not AI itself. Because when we think about AI as a monster, as something that's going to actually come and kill us, it actually hurts the philosophy of AI, which has nothing to do with how it is being used. Now, just to give you an understanding of where I'm coming from, there's this guy, Arnold Jennings. Who nobody actually remembers him anymore, but he was sentenced to death in 1910. And the way he was actually, found, because actually he killed a person, while he was sleeping, and then he wanted to rob the house and rape his wife, etc. And successfully killed the person. And then he left the place, and there was no trace of the guy. And it was a huge thing at that time to actually find the person. And the way they found him, Chicago police found him, was through his fingerprint. Now, in 1910, using fingerprints to confirm that this person actually killed Mr. Claris, the person who was killed, was a big deal. Why? Because well, the police, the way they found it was very interesting. It was his fingerprint was was on the paint, the new paint that was on the porch, and accidentally he put his hand on there, and then so his fingerprint was there. So and then the police actually took that thing from the porch and submitted to the court and said that, okay, these two matches, so this is the guy. He killed Mr. Claris. Now, it was, then there were a lot of other evidences were needed to actually make sure that this was the guy and everything. But the issue was everybody was talking about should it be the way to actually convict a person? Should we use fingerprints to do this thing? 100 years on, we are still using it, and we are using more technologies and different type of stuff to do that. And of course, we are actually asking a lot of questions. The point is, these things are not really accurate, and they shouldn't be. There is nothing accurate in this world. And so there's this thing called judgment of the people that we really need to think about before we actually take decisions on whatever. So that's why we have judges. And that's why it is difficult for them to actually take any type of evidence and use it for or against someone. And the same cases for AI. I mean, AI as a philosophy has changed the way we think. It has, and that's the problem. The problem is like, we are now actually thinking like, okay, maybe embracing AI would mean that I'm going to lose my job. Some other people think that, okay, if I embrace AI, then probably like the workflow that I have been practicing for a long time will have to be changed. And lots of confusions are there. So the idea is like, how do we think about, how do we actually get rid of those confusions which are there and make sure the people that understands that, this is a tool that will not change your ways of doing things. Of course, it will make you more efficient. It will give you more leverage. Just the way that fingerprint thing actually gave police the leverage to actually find the person. Now, this, if we think in that way, then we need to actually do these two things. Like we need to separate how we use AI, think about AI. Like one is to be thinking about like, understanding people and environment. The other one to think from is how the design interventions can be based on data, scientific ways, and AI and ethnographic thinkings could be used in those thinkings. Now, and we will always have to actually remember this kind of like a circle that we actually have, that people embraces interventions, and that changes the environment. We get responses, and then we get back, and the people again change. So this is a changing process all the time, and we need to really remember when we try to actually try to tell people what to do, or try to educate people in a sense that, okay, this is something new coming, and you should be embracing it. Now, I'm coming to the point. There are like key elements that we really need to think before we actually design some kind of a. This is an intervention as well. Like how the way we are thinking of teaching people AI or digital transformation per se is also an intervention that will change the way they think. So I mean, if we don't have these things, which I think are, important, not from. This is important for the people who are designing it, and also for the people who are actually embracing it. So they need to know, both of them need to know, like, what's the objective of this thing? So is it the objective that, it could be an objective that, okay, you need to think, the officer in the police department might think that, okay, we are going to have a new robot that will replace you. So that's your objective. That's the objective of, embracing a robot. So that could be one. And the guy actually knows that clearly that this is going to, change my profession. I'm going to actually lose the job and have to think about, farming or something else. But if that is there, then it's clear. It's clear to person, and then he or she can decide. So there is no way of like confusion there. And reducing confusion is something that which is most important in this case. So that's why we need to really understand what's the objective of the person who's going to actually get the intervention, and also for the designers first to actually think that, okay, what do I want to do here? Then we need to think about the stakeholders. Now, who are the people are we talking about? Like they're like. Are they like at the policy level? Are they in the mid tier? Are they in the lower tier? And confusion. The point is like everybody has their own way of thinking. Now there's two things. One is like a personal belief of something, and the other thing is like me being present in certain place actually gives me some kind of a thought process that actually as a group I think something else. So a policy maker group would think in a different way than a management group for sure. So if we think about the objective, then we need to actually probably think that, okay, each stakeholder should have their, when we are designing it, should have their different objectives. It shouldn't be just one objective for everyone. So that probably is something that we might need to think about. Then we will do the strategy. strategy, integrated strategy, because now we are talking about multiple objectives for different levels, and we need to actually find out a way to make it manageable. So the strategies will come for the managing purpose. Then the most important part is like the cultural change that will bring. Now, as I said about the fingerprint case, I mean, that's a cultural thing, right? I mean, like, you know, the prosecutors, the police, they were never using this kind of a process before, I mean, to convict a person. Now, you know, embracing that creates confusion. Embracing that makes people kind of nervous, and it's a shift from what they have been doing for a long time, and now they have to change on that. Now, you know, once we understand the strategy, how people work in that specific domain, we probably will be able to, you know, understand like how this thing might change the, you know, the whole scenario, and also, you know, and we could actually inspire people to actually bring about the change. Now, and then, you know, the last two things important, but I mean, I would say like, you know, not as important as those first four things, because once we are done with those first four things, we know what we are doing, we are inspiring people, and then the last two things, basically adaptability and, you know, agility and upskilling people will come for sure, because you know that this is, as we know about that circle that I showed, I mean, it cannot be a static process, so it will change and change and change. And so when we are thinking about that part, we are sure about our objectives and etc. Those key elements are, you know, figured out. Then we actually really remember that, you know, bureaucracy is a difficult thing. I mean, it's a way they actually behave. It's a different animal that we all know. And, you know, in institutional economics, there are dozens of like Nobel laureate, I mean, economists who basically got their, you know, prizes just because they had actually found different, you know, ways of actually how the bureaucrats work and how to change their behavior, etc. Now, I'm not going through that, but I'm just going to remind you of this two important things. This is this bureaucratic capture, which is a vicious thing. And what happens is, like, you know, most of the cases, you know, it's not only like, you know, the lobbyists capturing the, you know, bureaucracy. It could be, you know, the thoughts that also capture the bureaucracy. I mean, and which is happening. I mean, most of the governments, you know, talk about AI because they just need to talk about AI. Because I mean, probably UN told them to actually, you need to actually do this. I mean, you need to have some kind of AI going on there. And so what do we do? Okay, I know a software from there, and they make some chatbots. And I heard that, you know, they are like robots, and they can give you cool answers. So let's put a chatbot, pretty, you know, anime there, and then it's done. So you just have a tick mark. Now, that's the bureaucratic capture I'm talking about. So basically, you know, when we think about, like, you know, and why we do it, why do they do it? Because there's this problem with trust. Now, the trust is a very important thing, actually, because they don't really know, I mean, what this AI thing will do to them, what this change will come, how this change will come and impact their own job, the way they take decisions, how, I mean, we talk about transparency, etc. How will it make more transparent so that whatever I do, I don't even know if the IT guy knows better than I do what I do. So these are the questions that, you know, that they are confronting all the time. And so what they do is, like, they try to find out the easiest way, actually, to, you know, make people happy. So one is, you know, embrace chatbots. Two is actually say that, well, we have done AI, and we are actually, you know, 10 notches up on an indicator. Now, that's probably not the case that we would like to actually have us, right? And so, I mean, what do we mean by trust? So how do we build trust? Now, when I'm talking about building trust, I'm actually trying to say this very simple thing. I want to say that we want to make sure that people understand there is no confusion about AI. It's a philosophy. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of, it's like quantum computing. I mean, it's like quantum computing when we think about physics, that, oh my God, so, you know, only the biggest brains of the world might understand it, but I won't. But, you know, most of the things in quantum computing, until this, recently the Nobel Prize, where, like philosophy, people would think that, okay, certain things that, you know, quantum entanglement or something was totally a bizarre thing. Even Einstein was not really happy with those ideas. But, you know, they have proved it. It works. So until you actually reduce the confusion, people won't be able to actually get it. And the idea of, you know, this type of soft approach of, you know, teaching people to actually embrace it should be based on only one objective, that the person should get it, what they want to actually, what we want to tell them. And, you know, they will not tick, you know, do the stuff for, you know, ticking something. Now, the first thing is, I think, you know, if it is possible to have, you know, have it in the curricula, or the way we are designing the program. I mean, give them a way to actually, you know, execute a pilot project. I mean, it doesn't have to be like, you know, they do a project by themselves, but somehow, you know, I don't actually know how to do it, but I'm thinking, like, you know, maybe in the way we teach the courses, there should be some way actually this gives kind of like, exposure to that. Like Jean-Luc does it with the masters, and it's a bigger one, but I mean, I'm not talking about the bigger one, but it could probably come in the smaller one as well, so that they can understand, okay, this is something that can be done. When I say that build an in-house AI team, I'm not talking about engineers. I'm talking about, like, you know, people who will be thinking about AI. Like, you need to dedicate some people to get them out of their daily routine work, and then tell them that, okay, you need to think about this. You just cannot tell them that, okay, send some emails for this and then come and do this for as well, because it actually, you know, it actually needs dedicated people. So we need to make sure that, you know, this is something has to be done there as well. So some people should be dedicated. We need to provide broad AI training. We need to develop AI strategy, which should not, you know, lose the focus of that institution that we are talking about. We need to develop internal and external communications. So we need to talk to people about that. I mean, you cannot be like doing something in silo, and you cannot keep it into yourself. I mean, internally, you should be able to criticize it. You should have other people telling you what's going on, and you should also tell people that we are doing this, so that, you know, then you get to talk, and then something changes. Because now it's not AI in our labs. It's AI in the real world that we are talking about, and if we don't talk about it, it actually goes nowhere. So what I was thinking, like, you know, if we are thinking about, you know, if we can project these ideas that I talked about on the thing that we are trying to actually build here, I was thinking, like, okay, can we step back and a little bit think that, okay, I mean, we have like different objectives for different type of people, you know, that will be our stakeholders. So, for instance, like, you know, all officials, whoever like wants to join, should, I mean, it could be mid to low to mid-tier officials, and the objective would be to make sure that they understand what AI can do, right? Just what AI can do. I mean, what are the things that it changes? So, for instance, like how AI actually can be used to actually detect one object, and what is the problem of, you know, detecting wrong, right? Why AI would, you know, detect something wrongly, and why, I mean, what do we need to make sure that it is doing things right? So these things are very basic things, and it doesn't need, you don't need to actually have a huge computer science degree to actually do that. But I mean, this is something that everybody should have in that institution. So designing that for everyone, I mean, would be very helpful, I guess. So like the curricula should have basic understanding the impact of AI, and exposure to case studies. So whatever has been happening around the world, like, doesn't matter if it's a government or non-government, whatever. And I'm thinking, like, it shouldn't go beyond 4 to 5 hours. So we need to, whenever we are thinking about objective, And you know, as a computer scientist, I always try to put things like, you know, in a structure. So I'm using this thing, structural thing. So I'm thinking like, you know, 4 to 5 hours of somebody's time in this whole, you know, I'm not saying that every month, it's just 4 to 5 hours. Should not be too much and it should be okay for them to actually expose to themselves, them to this type of, you know, ideas so that they get inspired a bit. Then, and the policy level, like the people who has no time, and it could be 3 hours to 4 hours for them. But the idea is like, you know, they should need to understand 2 things. One is how integrating AI may help or disrupt their bureaucratic process. So that's what they want to know. They don't really want to know, like, I mean, that's what I think. I mean, while we were working with some bureaucrats in both in developing countries and also in Washington, I mean, we had our chances of talking to people, and the only thing that they were talking about, and it was very interesting that everywhere we talked about it, they were talking about the same thing. They just want to know, like, how will it change my way of thinking or way of work? That's what they want to know. And if you tell them something else, like AI has this, and this benefits, but don't tell them that how it's going to affect their work, they are not going to actually embrace it. And that's where you fail. They are not going to actually embrace it at all. Now, so the curricula should have these things, I guess, like, you know, again, basic understanding of how the change works, then understanding the risks, understanding what to prioritize. I mean, this is absolutely different from what I said about everyone, right? I mean, about everyone, it was like an exposure to the things. Here it's like very focused. We're not giving them mumbo jumbo about AI doing this and that. We're just basically talking about, you know, exactly what is there, right? And the last one is about the folks who will lead the projects. And it's very simple. I mean, I think that, you know, you will have a focal point in your team, and that guy will be working for you. And that guy and the others with the team should be able to, you know, set a direction. So your course should be, you know, thinking about the direction that should be set. And so the curricula should have the basic understanding, technical understanding as well, and also, like, you know, a workflow. Now, and then this should be more time-consuming and 12 to 14 hours. And I think that if we could actually change, I mean, design it in that way, it might somehow actually give a different notion to this thing, and it will not be a blanketed way of actually, you know, giving them some authority. All right, so that's it, I guess. Black screen came up, and thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I think you touched upon so many things. Like, for instance, we in the working group had long discussions on problem identification and finding solutions. And a lot of times we just do things for the sake of doing things in bureaucracies. And trust me, from time and again, I have pressure to start working on metaverse. And I'm like, just go away. Just wait. We need to first do, because there are all these kinds of buzzwords which keep on coming, and bureaucracies then tend to respond. So totally also associate with that. So I think, are there any questions or thoughts from the participants here? I see it's all well absorbed or boring, but so we will, I hope it was thought-provoking and we can learn from you as well. We will now break for coffee. Yes?
Just one thing, because I mean, I think the scope of this also learning exchange, but I think, I mean, if we look only at AI, and of course it's not, I mean, I don't need to publicize that, but this has been a big effort, also an investment from the European Union. There is already a course called Elements of AI. This was developed by Finnish university with, so everybody more or less knows, they say it, though they claim they already trained 850,000 people. And I mean, I was recently in Argentina where they were also discussing, because I mean, this has been translated by the, I mean, with the Finnish presidency of the European Union Council 3 years ago. They offered to translate in all the 24th official language of the European Union plus English, and that is not anymore an official language, but paradoxically. But basically, we are. I mean, the Commission has already done that. that's there is available for free online, and this gives this very basic. I mean, to be honest, I mean, I haven't really gone to do the training, but everybody seems very excited by doing that. So if you want to stay at this, let's say, initial level. And then there are other courses that also are real mock, like Coursera or others. Okay, that's you have to pay, but it's not a big impact. And,
there is.
And that is different than, just to clarify what the colleagues of GIZ said before, I mean, actually, the program master, we, as many other, let's say, program master of university, are much more expensive than 5,000. Actually, ours is valued 20,000, but thanks to the commission funding is accessible. And then there are scholarships. So I would suggest to, maybe to invest also in many programs that are in the world with scholarship to participants to go to do that in different way, online, blended, hybrid, rather than reinventing the wheel all the time. So this is a very, and on the other side, but what I think we should not miss the point is that AI is part, as you are currently saying, of the digital transformation of the government. That is a different thing. And there are no courses for that. There's no handbook. Even Thomas haven't yet written a book on that.
So perhaps you're waiting for that one from you, Thomas. So thank you so much for those remarks. Also, there is another course that came from in France called Destination AI, and we partnered with them at UNESCO, which is broadly available, and people can learn about basics of AI from the application point of view, what you said. So you learn some concepts, and then you learn what are the applications, and it's short. Like I made my team do it, everyone. It was 3 hours. So these kind of tools are available. So we'll finally take a short break, perhaps of 20 minutes, and we come back and then have the user testing and the form, and then I think we can call it a day. So thank you so much for your patience, and we come back at 4:30, if that's okay. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Perfect, thank you. Hi, everyone. So thanks for being back. We will start very soon on the tool and the presentation from Jacqueline from UNDP. If we can project Jacqueline on the screen. And Jackie, since there's a coffee break, people are just finishing. I tried to nudge everyone. We have a bell. But I think we can start with your presentation, and then we can talk about the tool that we have and start gathering feedback on that. So over to you, Jackie. Floor is yours. We don't hear you yet.
Okay, great. Now you hear me. Great. Okay. Afternoon, colleagues. Thanks, Pratik. Thanks to everybody for giving us this opportunity to discuss at length about AI and digital governance and all that entails. My name is Jacqueline Suma. I'm from UNDP, and I'm here representing the joint facility. Just to give you all of us an overview of what the joint facility is all about and what it is that we're really seeking to achieve in the line of digital transformation and capacity building for governments. I'm the capacity development specialist at UNDP. So let me just get that name tag out of the way so that you all can see me much better. So it's interesting. I mean, as I was working to prepare this, I came across an interesting quote that says, "The mind is a wonderful thing. It starts working the minute you're born, and it never stops until you get up to speak in public, like now." So I have my notes. So we won't be. We'll be very straight to the point, and we look forward to also, I think, receiving a lot of feedback throughout this session. There's been lots of great content that we have been learning so far from all our speakers that came on before me. And we just look forward to really concluding the session in as high a note as they started it off with, right? So just moving quickly into what we are. We are the joint facility for capacity development. And this is a joint partnership. And I'm going to be explaining a bit more about that as we keep going. So in case, I think as we let others come in as well into the auditorium, we'll be talking more about who we are and what we're seeking to do and how we're seeking to do it, and then how we'd love for you to be involved in this process with us today, right? Just want to make sure that I'm a bit clear. Just want to put some more light on me. Okay, good. So our vision is really our long-term vision for digital is to create a world where digital is an empowering force for people and planet. We've already read how some amazing stories coming out of different parts of the world of how capacity building has been carried out. And we want to ride on all those amazing, testimonials of what's happening out there. And really, the reason why we need capacity building, I think we all know. We've come out of a very interesting 2 years, with the pandemic and everything. And one of the things that has happened is those that were, digitalizing and embracing digital technologies were able to harness new opportunities really to keep their sustainable development going, rather than those that maybe weren't able to actually deal with the risks as effectively, especially due to the existing inequalities between and within countries, particularly, when governments lack resources to adopt fast-changing technologies and just really lack the necessary capacities to leverage opportunities in alignment with their national development priorities. So this is a key reason why we really want to make sure that when no man is left behind when it comes, no man or woman or country is left behind when it comes to digital transformation for whole countries. Can I just ask, I'd love to ask a quick favor, a quick question and learn about the audience that we have here with us today. So maybe by show of hands, and I would request our rapporteur, Pratik, to let me know a bit of a percentage. By show of hands, how many people in the audience are working in government, as civil servants, or in some type of government agency, servicing citizens on a day-to-day basis? It would be great to know, just by a show of hands. And probably,
So, two. I mean, it's not a very representative at all of the conference, because it's the last day and the last session and the last half an hour. So we don't have a lot, but just to give you an overview, ICEGOV, I think, had over 150 people, and a lot of, it's a mix, mostly academia, but a lot of practitioners as well. And then some private sector representatives, some civil society representatives, all have been here. And today it's a mix still, but I think it's more towards academia and then some practitioners, what we have in the room.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, that's great to know, because I think the great thing about practitioners is you're really involved on the interface between where tech and its use meet, tech and the citizens and the people that actually need it, whether it's through training them and building their capacities. So it's great lessons that we've been picking up, I think, throughout the session. Then one of the reasons, of course, that just a few of the reasons, right here we have about 7, but there's many, many more. We need to work on strengthening digital capacities on both the local and international level. And it's very critical just to enable, the inclusive, safe, and impactful whole of society digital transformation. As you can see here, there's globalized coordination is lacking. And really, there's not more I need to say to that. There's limited knowledge of needs of the individuals and institutions and their development, and limited impact of the individual training that limited impact that those who are trained individually really are able to take back to their institutions in order for the institutions to also benefit. And then just the impact measurement has been has not been as robust as we'd like to have, so that we can be able to deal and program very intentionally to meet the gaps. Then limited applicability, lack of representation, limited sustainability. We need to see systems that are couched within government structures, couched within the very culture of daily activities in order for capacity building to really have an impact. So to support the broader digital development ecosystem, therefore, the partners, ITU, UNDP, UNESCO, and GIZ have come together as the joint facility that tells us this point of contact and exchange between the partners in order to serve the needs of additional partners and stakeholders, particularly policymakers, and in areas related to digital capacity development. So, and the joint facility actually supports implementation of just digital capacity building elements from the UN Secretary General's Digital Cooperation Roadmap from 2020, which really just launched a broad multi-stakeholder network to promote holistic, inclusive approaches to digital capacity building for sustainable development. So this is this was actually the very thing that launched the the joint facility, and is the mandate that we move ahead with. So it actually combines the specialized expertise of all the partners, and this is really to enable all the partners to bring the wide-ranging ability to work at multiple levels of government, of private sector, of civil society, of academia, and with expertise across like a high priority spectrum of human development themes and geographies. It's really a whole of society approach, right? When we talk about building capacity, you start with, our aim, our focus is starting with government in order to see it then propagated to the other sections of society through, of course, private sector and business partnerships, through academia, through the civil society, and of course with state agencies and public and private partnerships. And all these trickle down to the citizens really eventually. I wanted to share a story of an old African proverb, and that explains why the eagle, as a bird, it flies higher than every other bird. And the proverb goes, it's actually a folktale. that when the creator created each animal, he gave them the opportunity to make a special request, which he granted. So after the eagle was created, she made her own special request, which is that the creator should grant the ability to fly higher than any other bird. So this was granted, of course, to her on one condition that it would be able, the eagle could only do it through practice, right? That her eaglets would acquire that skill of flying higher than other birds, not as a hereditary trait, but as a practical, through practice. And so when the eagle agreed, obviously, and left, and since then, the eagle has learned to teach her children how to fly higher than the other birds. So the eagle starts by making like a nest at the top of the tallest trees where she lays her eggs, then incubating them and hatching them when it's time for her eagles to learn to fly. And therefore, when they're born into the world, the tallest trees are actually their lowest level. From there, they're flying higher, right? They would fly from where they are to reach high, and she would be there to guide them, take them on routine flight practice. And by doing so, the eagle flies higher than every bird. I mean, so folktale, obviously we're scientists in the room, so, but I love the story because, it really illustrates how we learn by doing. And this is really what we as a joint facility are seeking to promote and to do by using the methodology that that I'm laying out here. And this is something as the partners, we've continued to refine and discuss, but starting with just providing information and resource referral, right? We start from there as a basic beginning that really when you have access to the resources, right? And curated resources, a library, an online portal that as users, as clients, one can go in and access, and it's self-service. So you're finding things that you need and being able to make use of them. So it's need-driven. Then followed by training, which is now, of course, moderated, like some of the examples that we've had of from GIZ and from GovLab. And and also from the master's program that Gianluca shared with us. You want skills transfer, it's expert-driven, and you have actual hands-on. It could be virtual, but it can also be face-to-face. And then peer learning and exchange, which is very self-explanatory. And mentoring and coaching, very key ways to promote South-South cooperation, and technical advisory as well to enable now in-depth and one-to-one assistance. And all these are currently happening. These are solutions that are provided from our different partners at the moment. In fact, these are just a list of the current solutions, as you will see here. They're all, a number of them falling in these different categories in varying scopes. And so just inviting everybody to, I think, reach out and get involved, perhaps from whichever partner or stakeholder group you would represent. We're very happy to, I think, work together to make our goal, to achieve the common vision that we have, right? And some of the benefits that we see coming out of this is just coordination, providing for a responsiveness to needs, providing for greater usability by adapting systems to fit within, or adapting whatever is created to fit within each and every partner, each and every government's context, or each and every country's context. Normally contextualizing trainings is quite important for them to really catch and be sustainable. And then obviously reach through the combined networks of all partners involved. Okay, then of course the capacity development process, just to run us through this real quick, it starts off with engaging stakeholders, of which you also are some of the stakeholders we're engaging, and we're happy to be involved in just having this conversation with you. And the Joint Facility is also one of those. Some of you may know the Digital Public Goods Alliance as well, the Multi-Stakeholder Network, the Edison Alliance, GovStuck, and a few other stakeholders that are involved in the whole process of supporting digital transformation, and of course including governments and country partners who would like to get their capacity built and developed. Then after that, we go into assessing. So assessing what assets and needs exist. And this is also quite It's a process also that, is done in partnership, where we're able to go into a country and kind of help them really gauge where do they stand and what then are the next steps in order to grow in their digital transformation journey. And thereafter, working out a response, formulating a response, and thereafter implementing it. And finally, coming back to evaluate it, get the lessons, and move on with, bigger and better. So this is where I think we move on to, if I don't know if there might be some questions, but I would like to quickly run us through the digital capacity navigator by sharing my screen, which I will do in a second. Okay, here we are. Okay, so this is the digital capacity navigator. I'm going to put that in full screen. And this is what we would really love your help to assess. We're going to share the link shortly. I will put that up on the next slide, the link that you can visit. And once you come in, yes, there's a little bit of content that speaks about the different competencies. And we are using, of course, the competency framework that we have been discussing, developed by UNESCO as part and within the BBCom. And we are then working on an assessment framework to enable just self-assessment. When you come onto the platform, you're able to answer questions that will help you know where you can maybe improve and where you're doing great, and also list particular recommendations for you for training. So once you click there, then you're able to go through this survey and answer questions as you would in a normal survey, and then give us your feedback. Okay, it's not just to put a disclaimer. This is a mock-up version, and it's not a fully functional web survey. However, we're putting out there in order to just gauge and understand whether this is something that would be of need or of use to our end users. Yes. So I think I'll leave it there then. I will move on to the slide with the link to enable everybody to be able to visit it, and maybe hand over to you, Pratik.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Jackie. So I don't know if people would like to, if you can go on the link over on the on the website, and if you want to share your feedback, but otherwise also just feel free to share if you know of other similar platforms, whether you feel the need of this kind of a platform, or if you have some other feedback. And I don't know if, Jackie, you want to put out some questions. We have a couple of people here who may perhaps want to share, or people here on the stage, any thoughts on this kind of an approach, or if there are similar initiatives that we can join forces with, so there's no duplication in a way. Any thoughts are welcome. Yeah, Eva. I think I can pass you the mic. It's here. You can just come on stage as well. You'll be on camera then, yeah.
Yes, thank you. I can just briefly come on stage and maybe initiate thoughts on similar tools. By saying that when we first thought about such a digital skill assessment tool, we came across a tool from the European Commission, and I think I've seen it on one of your slides, Gianluca, as well, previously. It's not that old. It might have been launched last year or the year before, but it works in a very similar way. You can self-assess your digital skills based on multiple questions, and I'm not sure, but there might be also some different categories that it shows your digital skills in. So this is a great opportunity to get some inspiration from, and maybe also to partner with. And I don't know, maybe Gianluca, you have a bit more experience on this tool, and you can share your experiences from that one.
Thank you, Eva, for sharing. Anyone else you want to take the floor?
don't know if there are other questions, but I mean, yes, this, I mean, to be honest, I lost a bit the track of that, in the sense that this has been, I mentioned this, the DG Comp, I guess you refer to, no? They started the Digital Competence Framework. Now I think is in the second 2.2 version, I think. So they've been developing over time. But then this was the original framework that now has been institutionalized somehow into the, even in the Europass CV, you can reference to that, if I'm not wrong, and also, yeah, it's been adapted to in many countries in Europe and in other part of the world. But then this also made, let's say, inspired other, because requests by other DGs of the Commission. So this has been developed by the JRC, the EPTS at the time, then has changed, so in Seville. So my colleagues, some are still working on it, and then in Brussels with the DG Education and Skills. And but then also there is another framework that is specific for entrepreneurship. They call it the Entrecomp. That's, I mean, I was involved in bit of this, like reviewing with the colleagues, friends, and also the Entrecomp when it started is with DG Employment, DG Grow, are all involved, and there are several others, including one specific for citizens. So it's very broad and generic. I think now they're developing one for learners, for teachers and educators. So, I mean, of course, I can put you in touch with all the colleagues that are working on that. On the other side, there is actually next door and other colleagues of the Commission, of DG Digit, that have been developed. The Interoperability Academy was mentioned yesterday by Veronica Gaffey. So these are started as a technical exercise. So everything is also done in open source. It is a very important element to consider, because you can get fantastic tool, and then, you know, the guy of Microsoft or whatever goes away, and you have to buy a license, and then it's a lot of money, or you don't have the competency. While in this case, you can also build a community of around this. The other point is that the Interoperability Academy so has all these tools free available, and they do training. Of course, there are a few people, some were here, and then there are other academy. Another one I got exposed very recently, I'm sure you are aware, is the one of DG INPA. So the international partnership, they have this academy in general on development, but now they are focusing more and more. And from what I know, because I work with them, they will do much more in the future. So maybe it's an opportunity to discuss with colleagues of DG INPA on that. Yeah, and then also JRC has been developing another academy, so a lot of academies. So, but maybe a bit more technical on specific issues. So, yeah, definitely this is very useful then. But of course, the outreach that you have worldwide can benefit of this. I mean, as I told already, I said many times now, I was in South America recently, and there's a lot of interest, and they are thirsty for knowing what's happening. And sometimes it's our fault that we don't necessarily, I mean, we don't have the time, or we cannot actually do, I mean, talking about Europe, do this transfer. And there are other elements specific then, for instance, cyber security is an area where there's also a lot of training at the moment, and Estonia is doing also a lot of emphasis. And as I say before, the Finnish government and are also promoting the elements of AI worldwide in different languages. So that's also something I'm sure they will be happy to partner with you, with us, let's say.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we were talking to colleagues from Digit this morning, and the way we were discussing what we are doing and what they were doing, we were like, why are we not having this workshop together? Because there are so many similarities, and I think that's a very good follow-up also of this conference, that we build those bridges, and definitely the idea here is also to be open source, so that this can also be then taken and contextualized in different domains, and is beyond a particular project cycle, and it stays and is owned by the communities then. I think, I don't know if there's anyone else who would like to add or share any feedback or comment at this point. Well, then I think, Jackie, that's it for now. I don't know if you'd like to share any final word from your side before we conclude.
This is a more practical question,
Yes.
but I guess you are, I mean, as all the processes, you are developing this, say, mock-up and also then, you know, the prototype or trying to see. And I understand this is based on the current version of the competency framework. So, so one question or maybe a suggestion is also to of course, I'm sure you know it, maybe to build it in a flexible way so that if the framework somehow will be revised, improved, then this can, of course, be taken into consideration. And then, of course, the other question is, I mean, what is, or what are you planning in terms of testing and, you know, getting user, let's say, view of the platform, but both from the technical part, that may be the easiest one, but also from the, I mean, in terms of the content.
Absolutely. I'll let Jackie answer, but just to say that the idea of the platform that we're developing is to not limit it to one framework. It is also being done in a way that when the framework is revised, I mean, for instance, we were working at UNESCO and we had the teacher's competency framework, which has been revised, I think, by now 3 times over the past many years. So it's really an approach which allows for modification, but also to see if there are other competency frameworks in other domains which can also leverage this platform. So the idea of the platform is to create it as a digital public good, which can then, you know, following all the principles, open data, open algorithms, and so on. But over to you, Jackie, on the second part perhaps also.
Okay, great. Thank you for that question. Yeah, Luca, and yes, for the comments from Pratik as well. We definitely want to be agile and flexible, I think, as one of the ways of working in our current constantly changing digital world. And also, of course, making it open to plug into any existing system or any system that might be developed. So I think that just to answer to the first part, that how we're working on this. In fact, at some point, we probably would allow as well to have users just assess themselves, choose the framework that they'd like to use just for self-assessment and work through that. And ideally, then our content is to just filter it according to whichever of the frameworks that they're assessing themselves against. Yes. And then I think for spreading the word, we would, of course, count on, I think, our partners and the networks. Those that are here, you're already, I think, involved in this process by just being here to give us your feedback, and of course additional partners that we would build out. There's networks that exist. For example, UNDP has 170 country offices all over the world, and we work mainly through the country offices to reach out to governments. So inviting academia as you go back to also share it with your own networks and bring more into the fold to gauge really the effectiveness and efficiency of it. And I mean, ITU has training centers as well all over the world. UNESCO has a wide number of just centers of excellence. So we're really, GIZ obviously works in every country, most developing countries, also globally. So using those, really leveraging those networks. And then forums such as these are really useful just to share more about what we're doing. I think here are some of the cutting edge, some of the best practices in order to keep improving it. And yeah, any other ways are, of course, welcome. I think it's this is an open partnership in that sense, where we love to collaborate.
Just on the user testing part as well, there is a plan once we have a more refined version. This was just a mock-up. There is, I think, a 5-part plan to test it with specific groups from technical point of view, but also from the user point of view, which we are talking about people centricity here. So it's really also trying to put it in practice. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating in this workshop. And we would for sure be in touch. And if you would like to contribute or have discussions afterwards, we'd be more than happy to welcome you. And we look forward to engaging with the ICEGOV community going forward as well. As we're just starting this work, this was launched in September, we are now in October, and it's a start, and there will be many iterations to it. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Gianluca. Thank you, Zabir, and thanks to all the panelists who are online as well. Thank you.